Do you know what I like about my friends? It seems that whenever they decide to do brand new things, such as go to races, they start right at the top. Welcome to episode 30 of the Pitbox Podcast. So today, well, actually, Seb tried to keep it a secret for a little bit, but I was on to him, and then the rest of the group chat was on to him. He went to the Rolex 24. Now, obviously, this is a major event, not just because for IMSA, technically, it's the biggest event of the year and is one of the highlights of the entire racing season, as well as the first event of the racing season. But also, we had a new category of cars out. We had the GTP class that everybody's been waiting on for a few years now, with Cadillac, Acura, Porsche, and BMW joining. And of course, they'll be racing in WC as well. But fortunately, Seb was on the grounds for us. We always had troops on the ground. We got our ears to the streets. Every track in America, it doesn't matter. We know what's going on out here. And as I mentioned, this was Seb's first time going to, was it a race in general?
Yeah, we could call it that. Yeah. Race in general, first IMSA race. Broke a lot of cherries that week.
Whoa,
How do you start at
whoa!
the
I
top?
didn't even know that. Okay,
How do you start at the top? Like Gartrell goes to Spa, man, ain't never
serious,
been to no type of race before. It's like, you know what? Let's go to Belgium.
right?
This guy over here decides to go to Florida. Okay, all right. So, of course, me and Chris have been to a few events before, but let's
Sir,
let's talk about Daytona, the hype, the crowd, which also was the most the most like the highest attendance of a Rolex 24 as well for this one. So you definitely
Oof.
picked.
Lay it on the fans, Seb. Lay it on the fans.
Yeah, I thought that was funny when you texted in the group between you, me, and Jordan, and you like took a I think you took a screenshot of like a helicopter view of all the people on the grid doing the grid walk before. And I was like somewhere in there. I couldn't point myself out if you asked me to, but like it was insane. Like we got, I guess just to lay it there, like from the beginning, from the beginning of the race, everyone came in and like pretty much went straight to the grid first. Me and my friends, we went to the stands because that's where we wanted to watch the race kick off. Like, well, my friends were a little bit less adventurous as myself. They wanted to find a good spot in the stands. They wanted to get a good chair, good view of turn one. And I thought, this is cool, and I'll come back, but I'm gonna leave you here in the meantime because like all this shit going on right now, like I can't just look at it. I have to like actually get in there. Like I want to like talk to people. I want to get close to the cars. Like I want some action. And so I made my way in there, and they first blocked off the grid, and they had everybody like they were doing the whole grid walk, so all the cars were coming through, and then of course the GTP cars were the last ones to come around. Um, and then finally they got rid of the wire that was covering or that was blocking the grid, and everyone just crowded over, and everyone was just going in, like taking peeks inside of cars. There were people touching tires, like people just like really trying to test the limits of like what can
What can I do?
yeah, and I was totally looking there like I'm really not trying to get kicked out of like before the race even starts, so I'm just gonna like peek into a window and like really get a good look, snap some photos. So, but yeah, to kick it off there, like it was a great start. It was really exciting.
It's funny that you actually said that. You kind of had your friends park up, and then you took it upon yourself to go and explore. Basically, me and Steve, like our trajectory is usually the exact opposite. We're like, let's do all the exploring in the beginning, right? Kind of get a feel for like the grid, get a feel for where the drivers are at, get a feel for when things are going to be happening in like different time frames of the race, so that this way you position yourself kind of, I guess, optimally to get the most out of it. So I could definitely see how you wanted to go and explore more versus like most people, they definitely have like that same mentality where they probably go to the race and they're like, oh, I'm going to sit in one area and I'm just going to watch the race and call it a day. But yeah, once you actually get into like the exploration aspect, the grid walk, checking out the team's booths, getting to see inside of some of the cars And even in like the scenario that me and Steve went, we went to Watkins Glen, sometimes you even get to like sit inside the cars, as crazy as that might seem, depending on how good your networking skills are. So yeah, I could definitely see how you wanted to be all up in the mix, considering like the group of influence that we kind of got going on right now.
Oh, 100%. The first thing I thought of was Steve sitting in the Porsche, and I'm
Yeah, he's like, bro, you gotta get to
like, but yeah, no, it was really cool because I think from their perspective, like to your point, like one of them had been to Rolex, but like 10 years ago. The other kid that we were with, he was a big NASCAR fan, and then we were there for a bachelor party, and so the bachelor boy himself, that was his first race altogether, just like myself.
Oh,
And
wow.
so everyone's concept, like I don't think this is common in NASCAR. My other friend who went to Rolex a couple of years ago, he's into racing, but like not as much as everybody else is. At least not as much as myself. And the bachelor boy, he just, I don't know, it was his first race, so I don't think he thought like, oh, we can really get that close and intimate to the cars. Like he kind of took it as like, this is just like a football game or a soccer game or whatever. You
Right.
get your seats on,
Spectate.
Different.
right.
And
it's
like, history.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm like, dude, if you can go onto the grid that they're going to be racing on, like onto the pit lane that they're going to be conducting pit stops on, like why would you not? So I was
Right.
like, I'm gonna do my thing. I'll see you guys later. Like save my seat.
So yeah, I mean, Steve, I guess what would you say is like the most important thing for like considering the type of race that Seb went to go see? What was the most important thing that he should have done, or I guess like what would have been a more optimal way to kind of structure the day? I guess just to give like the people who are watching like a better idea as to how they should approach going to like Daytona or something like that.
Listen, man, you gotta have a strategy, plan, execute. So, of course, you mapping the whole thing out like the day before or 2 days before. And the first thing that I look at on the schedule is when when do the festivities pop off, essentially. Not necessarily when does the gate open, because the gates open pretty soon, pretty early in the day. And then, of course, there's so many people that stay at the track. Like, that's not the most significant part. The most significant part is if it's the practice days, like when does the track go hot? And then for race day, when is the grid walk? Because because we go for multiple days typically, um, you want to try and do as much meeting drivers and getting stuff signed and, well, as Chris said, networking and stuff the days prior to the race, just so that when race day comes, you're not scrambling trying to meet people that you've been waiting your whole life to see. And it's like, oh, I saw him like 2, 3 times already. Like, that's my boy.
Right.
Like,
Yo, you throwing at the peace sign like, yo, remember me? Yeah,
yeah, like
back in the
that's my
paddock.
people. I'm about to be in this DM later. We about to chop it up so I can see how I can get his job, So
Yeah, yeah.
so it's like yeah, I think it's important to know exactly what time will the pits go hot for practice days. Because with IMSA, that's the best value per dollar in terms of actually getting close and meeting people and just being in it. You guys have heard us talk about it multiple times when it comes to other events where you go to F1 race. If you want the type of access that you get at an IMSA race, you either have to be like Brad Pitt, have some crazy VIP ticket that you paid who knows how much for, or you have to be on the team. Which to get on the team, unless like you're a mechanic, you had to spend some real coin to be a part of that too. So I think IMSA is great value for money, and like Chris said, like I literally was in a cup car last year.
Yeah,
Like
you don't really get that experience anywhere else. And even like briefly touching back on like traditional sports like American football, baseball, soccer, etc. Like the closest that you get of an interaction with the actual people who are involved is like if you go to the game and you get to like kind of peek in the dugout, for example, for baseball, or maybe if you go to a football game, you might get the chance to see one or two athletes if you're lucky, versus like a grassroots style of racing like IMSA and WEC, for the money, once again, you're able to do just so much. It depends on you as an individual. And then, of course, depending on which race and which location, how far of a distance you have to travel between, going to the paddock versus going to where you're sitting versus going to where the shops are, versus where would the teams be at, kind of like what Steve was saying. But Seb, so, day one, tell us really what's going on, and then roll us into day two, man.
Yeah, so for day one, it was really sick. It started at the grid walk. Made my way like as far up and as far down the grid that I could go, like literally from the GTP cars all the way to the GTD cars, and which is a feat in itself because it really was so packed that like you're pretty much like maneuvering your way through like almost like Black Friday type crowds just to get from one end to the other. But it was really cool, and I appreciate Steve for trying to get me hooked up with Jordan. I tried to make my way over to him. He was somewhere over by the 23 car, the Aston Martin, and we just were unable to connect. But I did like chat it up with one of the mechanics there and picked his brain a little bit. I thought that was pretty cool. And to like bring it full circle, when I went back to my seats, we did sit at T1. And we did get to see the race start. We saw there wasn't too much carnage, but there were definitely a lot of lockups by turn one. So that was a really cool experience in itself. A couple of safety cars to start too. But then we were there for probably maybe like an hour or two, and then made our way to the infield. And we walked around the infield. You can go pretty much everywhere from the infield, except the only place we didn't really make our way over to was the now they call it the Le Mans chicane. That would have been sick if we could have made it there, but I think there was also like quite a distance from the chicane itself to like where the fence was, just because like that's probably the most technical part of that track. And there was I think there was an LMP2 car that like shunted really hard.
Yeah, there was a hard hit.
Yeah,
that was brutal. But even just making your way around the infield, like you can go from pretty much like right where the hairpin is all the way up to I think turn 5 ends just at that corner, and then they start going around the loop and they make their way to the bus stop chicane, and then they start making their way around the other end of the loop as well. So everywhere from the inside, from the infield, they had stands, they had just the accessibility was insane. Like you could literally walk around anywhere. There were tents picked up everywhere. There was a whole Porsche section. So the Porsche club made its way down there as well. And so everyone and their moms who had a Porsche was literally pulling up.
He rolled everywhere.
Yeah.
It was so sick. And it was a ton of walking. Now I know in advance I'm bringing my running shoes because this poor old Reeboks could not hang. I pulled a Gartrell. Homeboy was wearing Jordans, walking through the forest.
Brutal,
son.
My guy had that thing sliding in the mud. It was a shame, man. Them things were.
Look, this is no time to be styling and profiling.
Yeah,
you got to be comfortable.
You flex the aesthetics, on a calm day where you're just gonna sit in one spot.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way. It's cool. My legs were totally done, I think, in the first day alone. So we got there for the kickoff of the race. And then we wanted to stay like the full night. We were going to power through it, but unfortunately one of my friends ended up getting food poisoning. So we ended up going back home by like 1 a.m. Even then, like that was just the whole day there was awesome. Like just hearing those cars constantly, it just gives you fuel in yourself, like within yourself.
Yeah.
Like constantly being around it and just like smelling the race fuel, you're just like electric the whole time. Like I didn't even need coffee, which is crazy because I'm an ass. Like it was beautiful.
Yes. Honestly. True. Not that many people get to experience what you just explained, but if you're a true enthusiast, like on that type of level, exactly what Seb said, you'll be so caught up in like the wow, I'm here, let me try to absorb all this, that like you don't even notice when you start getting tired. You just start getting delirious. Like me and Steve, towards the end of the day, we would just start babbling to each other, couldn't complete full sentences necessarily. We're just like, bro, listen, it's the end of the day. Let's get some food and let's get some rest, and we'll be back out here again. So we can definitely attest to relating to that.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of sound, which GTP car did you think sounded the best?
The Caddy. for sure. That thing
Oof.
it sounded
The transition from hybrid to the engine coming on sounded like freaking like I said in the group chat, sounded like DEFCON 5. And I'm not the biggest Caddy fan, but I gotta give it to him. That thing sounds wicked.
Yo, me neither. I was like fully expecting, like I'd seen so many videos of the BMW GTP car, and I was like, man, I really want to hear this. But
Yeah.
honestly, it was the Caddy GTP and what was it? The GTD Pro Corvette.
The
Easily,
CR.
yes, that came second out of every car on the grid. That car just sounded incredible. Like the downshifts just like punched you in the face every single time you were buying it.
Yeah, those V8s, man, they're it's tough to beat the sound of the V8 as far as like impact and resonance and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was so much fun. It was really cool because we went to the hairpin when we first got to the infield. And at least in that way, you could see between all the classes of cars, like where they're braking, what lines they're taking, like how they even sound when they're entering into the corner. And you can go around the hairpin, so you can go to the entry and you can see kind of like where their braking points are, where they're hitting that hairpin, and like where they're trying to make their exit. Then you can go around to the other side where they have bleachers, and you can go ahead and see the exit of the hairpin. And so you can kind of get like a full analysis of like all the classes of the cars that are there, and like
Right.
some are racing each other, how some are actually getting out of the well, most are getting out of the way, but also like how they're even approaching all these corners. And then you can make your way throughout that whole part, that whole technical section of the infield, and just see how these cars are maneuvering around each other. And it's just like it's insane how fast the GTP cars are.
You say it every time.
Keep telling people it's prototype. It's not a game.
It's ridiculous, man. Honestly. But all right, so walk us into day 2 now. So friend has food poisoning. Hopefully he's recovered. We're good to go. What's day 2 looking like?
He recovered. We were good to go. We unfortunately didn't make it to the end because our flights were in the way, which at the end of it all, like it kind of sucked because our flights were delayed. So like we could have ended up staying, but you know,
That was one of those damn moments.
Exactly. Like we were watching it all in the airport, like on the TSA line, and like as we were getting into the
No way.
terminals, and then we like find out that like our flights, like at least mine was like an hour delayed. And my other friends, like by the time I got home, like they were just flying out. So we were all watching the end of the race at the airport. But in terms of day 2, like it was the energy was still there. I think it's also because a ton of people just like camped there overnight, and so like the energy is not really going to leave anywhere.
Yeah.
But there was still like a healthy amount of people that were there. It was I would say it was way more I don't know, way more present on the first day. I think everyone just wanted to squeeze in like between the track walk and just getting everything done there. And then there were some people that like stayed overnight. There were others that like come until like the end of the race just to catch that. But yeah, all in all, it was a great experience. Didn't walk as much on the second day. The first day, I think we clocked in like 8 miles. So
true. The first day beat it up, man. All right. It happens.
Yeah, like I said, learn the hard way. So I'll bring a pair of more comfortable shoes next time around.
Oh yeah. But yeah, like I said, people don't realize like how fast race cars are in person. It's like, yeah, they look fast on TV, but when they literally fly past you at 170 plus, it's a bit different.
Yeah, I think on the final straight at Daytona, the GTP cars were hitting 202.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah.
Like right before the braking zone for turn 1. Yeah, it was about 200.
That was the thing that kept blowing my mind was like towards the end of the night, the first night we were there, we went back to where we were sitting for when the race kicked off, for when lights were out. And that way you can actually see the brake lights on all the cars when they enter T1. And it was like so different, like wild different. Like you see the GTP cars, like they're like they just tap the brakes like towards like the ladder and like just as they're coming into the corner.
Barely, like with their pinky toe, it feels like almost sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, how are they braking so late?
It actually took my friend was like not convinced that they were even braking at all. He's like, no, those are just brake lights. And I'm like, I mean, listen, I'm you have to brake for this one. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And to me, also, the cool part about when you do the longer races is nighttime. You get to see them with the glowing brakes, the gunshots, the flames shooting out the exhaust, the glowing exhaust. Like, it's sports cars after dark is just amazing.
yeah, that was the part I was looking forward to as well. Cause I know, especially GTP cars, like I know they don't have that like the same kind of like rake as like a Formula One car would, where like they're scraping the bottom of the car that often. So like yeah, but it was happening every so often, especially after turn one, like when it kind of went from the bank to like back to regular like street level.
Full compression.
Yeah, like if they kind of didn't like if they didn't enter the turn at like the right I guess like trajectory, or if they kind of like came in a little bit too late, the car kind of like swooped down a little bit and you get a little spark. And that was probably that was I was waiting for that because I'm like, yo, I want to see some sparks, dude. Like give me the fireworks. Had fireworks too, but I'm like, nah, these are better.
Wanted to get the fireworks from the car. Flamethrower coming out the back, sparks coming out the other side, brakes blowing, the full effect. Honestly, it's one thing to watch a race during the day, but it's completely different watching it at night. There's no comparison.
Yeah, and there were a lot of driver changes going on at night too. So when we were in the stands and we were watching all the pit stops going on, like especially between all the different classes, like you would just go to see like the process in the pits for getting these drivers out. And like in some of the, I think it was the LMP2 car, basically starting from LMP3 all the way up to the GTP cars, there were a good handful of them that were actually like taking out like portions of their seat.
Mm.
I guess like
seat inserts.
Yes, insert.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly that. And my whole like concept of it is that they just kind of like jump right out and then jump right back in. And for most of the other cars, that was the case. But in these scenarios, I think because the seating arrangement is a lot different, I mean, for example, like if someone like Steve's height is about to walk into the same car that Chris is about to jump into, there's no way y'all are sharing
That's
the
a
same
big difference.
Yeah.
Sorry, listen, your boy's short. I'm gonna need that booster seat, dog. I'm gonna need that booster seat, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely need the seat inserts for the prototypes. The GT cars, usually like the pedals move and you can move the steering wheel also, like up, down, and like in and out, right? Well, called telescopic.
Yeah.
And of course, like then in cup cars, the seat does go forward and back also.
Right.
Yeah. In the GT cars, I was seeing one of the I guess one of the crew would open up the passenger side door, and then they would also like help strap the driver coming in, and then also like help, I guess, with a lot of the other additions that they would need to make them more comfortable.
Yeah.
But all in all, they managed to do it like super quick. I think I overheard someone being interviewed, and they said their time to beat is like 20 seconds.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is wild. Seat apparatus and all.
Yeah, everything. That's wild. From like hitting the lollipop to like tires are flared, let's go, like back on track.
Yeah. Well, if you notice, most of the time, like unless they're changing all four tires, or actually no, let me phrase it this way. Most of the time you will notice they're done well before the entire pit stop is done. Like usually they're in the car just chilling, for a decent number of seconds before it's time to get back to it. So yeah, that's always so impressive. And it's funny, like you had mentioned it to me before, and this is something that you definitely notice when you get a chance to see the cars up close. The prototypes are super claustrophobic on the inside. And it's funny, like one of the drivers in LMP2, is he 6'5"? He was like 6'4", 6'5", and he said he literally had to move his legs to the side whenever he turned the wheel, which, as you would imagine, is quite often
right.
in a race like this, just so that he's not clipping his leg on the steering.
On the cha-cha slide underneath, man. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. And like you see like how tight it is in there, and you're like, Wait a minute, he's doing what? Oh God.
And when
Damn.
we were actually there the day before the race even kicked off for the sprint race that they had. I think it was like the 4-hour sprint race. And we a lot of people also pulled up as well, but that was when they had the garages open for all the GTP cars and the LMP classes as well. And a lot of them were deconstructed. Just, you know, they were probably doing their checks. They were making the cars prepped, ready for the next day. Those cars, like, even when they're stripped, like, it was really hard for me to imagine like how like or rather like see it in real life, seeing how small they are, like so tiny. And that someone like I don't know, just like between everything, like seeing like how tiny they are, like who's got to get in this thing, and like the fact that they're driving this thing for 24 hours and you're in this cramped space, like if you don't have claustrophobia, like you might as well after that race. It's just insane to me.
Yeah, that part is kind of crazy, but I guess for those guys, like they kind of got that claustrophobic thing in check. Either that, or there might be a driver that gets claustrophobic, but his focus is just so lasered on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, et cetera, that he just completely like disregards everything else. You know what I mean? Because some of those guys, I mean, majority of them, when they get in that zone, it's almost like you shift a light switch in your brain, and like everything else that you would normally think about just goes out the window, and it's just like what's in that moment. So yeah, it is kind of crazy because you can imagine what type of conversations happen after these drivers are jumping out after their like session, if you will. And it's like, dude, how do you feel? And they probably don't even talk to anybody immediately. They just probably pop the headphones on, head straight into the truck, and do whatever their decompressing slash relaxation slash refocus routine would be. It's kind of crazy just to see them go from like crazy intensity to then let me take a breath and then right back into it, you know, almost as if like it's nothing. It's crazy.
Yeah, the mentality you have to be in those cars to race for such a length like that, like lots of props. Like there's a reason why they're doing it. There's a reason why they get a lot of respect for doing it too.
Right. I guess my next real question would be, what part of the track was your favorite? Like, what do you have a favorite turn? You know, bring us into that scope.
It's a good point. I would say, what was it? Wasn't that? I would say it was from. I'd say it was 3 and 4, just because, which I believe is the first. It's the first corner after the hairpin, so they go to the hairpin, and then they have that left-hander, and then there's that like long banking right-hander, and it's kind
Right.
of like the right-hander, and then it goes out, and then you go back onto the
Steve, we should help out the fans. Put a little track grid on the screen right now so we could all.
Oh, yep.
We
Let's see. You
lost
got.
that press back.
better. I got a sticker from the Inza
Oh
store.
yeah, there we go. There
There
we
we
go.
go.
There we go. So we're looking at the International Horseshoe right there.
Right, that is Daytona for all the fans.
So this is what I'm talking about right here.
Oh, the little kink right there into.
Yeah,
Okay, I
this
got
is
it.
the hairpin after the first turn here. So this is, I guess, technically turn 2.
That's the horseshoe.
Right.
Horseshoe. Whoops. And then yeah, so this corner, and I'll say that just because like it was one of the last places we went to, just because we didn't even know we could get that far, and then we found out there were like a whole ton of bleachers and like just a whole walking section over there.
Right.
It's kind of like tucked away because the way the track is designed is that they have trams that go from the infield to a section on the outfield, like right outside the stadium. And so if you're like inside the actual like stadium and you're in the stands and you want to make your way to the infield, you don't have to walk like through the tunnel and like pretty much you're walking like a half mile from like there to like the inside of the track. Instead, you can take a tram, and the tram takes you right by all of that. So if you're not paying attention, you might not know that you can actually access all those areas. And that was so sick at night. And we found out super late because you were just seeing like brakes literally on fire, like just
The coolest thing, I swear.
insane. And it was so sick too, especially at night, just because you had all of the extra, like just extra heat, all the extra stuff just going on. It was so much fun. What I will say though, to note as well, that I was like kind of unimpressed with the LMP3 cars. Like,
Okay.
like they just like when you go from like the GTP and then you have even like the LMP2, like those are exciting, and then the LMP3 is just the sound alone, like they were just not impressive. Like like most of the cars on the grid that were like the GTD and the GTT Pro, like they sounded better than the LMP3 cars.
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit too. I can't even lie.
Not to front on them. I mean, like, hey, they're
Yeah, no,
racing
no,
too,
no,
and
no
like,
shade.
you know, it's got their own speed. But if
It's
I'm
just
just
when we go to the track, we want the rowdy ones to show up. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get the emotions high.
right, right. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was my favorite section for sure. Yeah, we got to go next year.
Yeah, please, please.
Well, let me ask you this. Well, just so the fans know, we will be at Watkins Glen. I promise you that. What are you most looking forward to with Watkins Glen?
I think just a different track layout. Like I really enjoyed the Rolex layout and the environment, but I'm also curious to see how they replicate the same environment at a different track. Like they also had a lot of things going on the infield where like Acura came through, BMW came through, Ford was there. Like they had a whole bunch of booths and a whole bunch of cars. Like Toyota was there too. Um, and like it was really cool checking out like all the cars that they brought and also just talking to a lot of the people there. They had a sim booth. They also had a reaction booth where like they had like, you know how F1 drivers like they'll test the reactions and like hit the lights.
Yeah.
Did that
Right.
kicked some like 12-year-old's ass anyway.
Hey, listen, everybody can get
Fair game. Listen,
Nobody's safe.
you're gonna learn today.
He probably pulled up in a Porsche anyway, so at the end of the
Yeah, right. It's Rolex. Anything's on the table.
day. It's true, it's true. But yeah, just pretty much comparing environments, like seeing how much of a spectacle Rolex is compared to like what Watkins can deliver as well. So just in a comparative environment, just taking the two and going like, wow, they did this really well, they did that really well, or like, you know, maybe I can get even closer to the grid at Watkins and like really like feel the cars up close comparatively to Rolex. So
Oh, we're gonna get close. Don't worry. Like,
sure.
Watkins is a different breed, man.
like I keep telling people, you have to go on the practice days. You
Yeah.
walk right, you could damn near get hit by a car. Like
We
that's
over
how
there
close you
giving
are.
high
Man.
fives. Yep. We watched somebody turn down the wrong block. We was like, yo, you gotta go that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have thought we were a part of the whole thing. Like we're over here traffic, talking to teams. It's crazy, man. Crazy.
You just reminded me there was a really weird like they had there was like small streets on the infield part of the grid, and a lot of it was just for like in like transportation trams and like cars that were taking you to and from. Like Lamborghini was there out in full force. They had like really attractive blondes like just driving Uruses all around everywhere. You got some kind of like fancy like they were chauffeuring you around. I'll make sure to buy that ticket next year.
Yeah, right.
But halfway through the night, I think I ended up seeing it on the replay too. I think it was an LMP2 car that like it was trying to make its way back to the pits because they had like a problem or something and they didn't want to go through like the rest of the track. Instead, they wanted to like cut through the infield, and so they cut through the infield where everybody was, and everyone was like,
"The heck?
Why is that here? Like what?" And some guy like tried flagging him down, like, "Yo, you can't."
You're not supposed to be over here. Right.
It was so funny, but to see that, like, it was just like so out of the ordinary. It's like this guy really should not be here right now, but like we're so glad that you are.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, like that's the best part is how close you can get. Bro, Chip Ganassi nearly hit me with his golf cart the first time I went to Watkins Glen.
Oh man.
Like, oh, it's Chip. Oh, almost got hit. My bad. I got you.
Right.
Make like a fly and hang on to the
like next
windshield,
time.
bro.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, and then again, like because all of the garages are open, so like um the Michelin Pilot Cup series and then Porsche Cup, like all their garages are open. So you literally can just walk right through the garage unimpeded. And like No one says anything. Nobody cares. You damn near in the car with them. It's all good. Of course, like the teams for WeatherTech, they have their trucks blocked off, but you're still right there. And then to your point earlier, it's pretty cool when you get to see them put the cars together. I've even been there when they've done the first starts for the weekend. That first cold start, see them plug the computer in. You get that nice long.
Yeah. You hear them prime the fuel pumps. Thing sounds like turbo just turning on.
My man plugging away.
Oh, here we go.
And then the whole fucking tent.
The whole
shakes.
booth rattles.
Yeah, the whole tent shakes. It's like, oh man, yeah, that's what I came for. That's why I'm here.
We actually, when we were there the day before, and they had the sprint race going on, we went to the top of the garages for the GTP cars, and we couldn't really hear because there was so much going on, but we felt the floor vibrating, and it would just like vibrate even more and more after a while. And then we like looked down over the edge, and there was just a crowd of people all around that garage in particular, just like trying to look at this car get started up. And I was like, oh shit, I think they just started a car under us. And then just as I said that, like you just literally feel like the whole ground vibrate, like, oh shit. That
Pretty cool, man.
So that it was like that, but like 20x when it started when we were in the stand. So it was great. You could feel it, you could smell it, you could hear it. Everything you want is there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And this year, besides just for GTP, there's more new cars in the field. The new 992 GT3R, 296 GTE. Of course, the new M4 came out last year, but that just came out last year. That's still a relatively new car as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing and hearing those up close compared to their predecessors.
Yes, sir. You'd be surprised what just being a good human being and like just being friendly will get you. Just really quick, just touching on like when you go into the garages and stuff. All you gotta do is be like a free, open, casual human being, and you'd be surprised. Like some of these guys, they'll bring you in, they'll have you, taking a look at the inside of the car up close. Sometimes they have specific rigs. They might say that, hey, if they're not being used, you can practice on this little sim right here or something like that. You'd be surprised, man. Just being down to earth and like not weird and not an asshole will get you, a long way. So I'm excited to see everybody that comes through to Watkins Glen this year, because I've already had the privilege of experiencing it once with my guy Steve, and I can rant and rave all day, but it's a completely different thing where you're going to be in the mix with us. So this next video that we come out with after Watkins Glen, stay tuned for that, man, because we're going to have a few of us that have never been there before actually get first experience of what it's like to be behind the scenes in like an official race like that. I'm excited.
Oh yeah. We're gonna make that happen. Any closing thoughts, Seb?
Nah, man, I'm honestly now excited. After Chris just got me super excited for Watkins. I'm ready to like have you lead the way. You better bring like a whistle and a flag so we can have a class.
That's it. Yeah,
like, he's gonna turn around like, all right, we're gonna need a head count. Is everybody here? All
right. Bathroom breaks. Now's your chance.
Gotta pull the list out, Chris. Seb, here, Mary, here. Okay. Like let's keep it rolling to the next one. But yeah, like I said, IMSA is always a great time. We'll be out there. Might have to make Daytona happen next year. We'll see. We also have some other trips planned that hopefully we can make happen too for 2024. We'll see what happens. I mean, and then also, they ain't going nowhere.
Right. One last thing I just thought of, and I'm surprised that we didn't think of this earlier, but let the fans know real quick, Seb, how much was it for a ticket to Daytona for those 2 days, so that this way they know, like, hey, this is something that I might want to do for myself. Where do they go first off to buy a ticket, and roughly how much is it for the ticket that you paid for, just before we go?
Yeah, good question. So the who was it? It was the best man ended up coordinating everything since it was a bachelor party, but I did ask him like how much it was roughly for the tickets, and we ended up getting I think it was like full weekend pass. So I think it was like a 3 or a 4 day pass. and it allowed you into the infield, and you got like this cool wristband, which is somewhere in my drawer somewhere. But that I believe ran at about like 140.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
So again,
For everything we experienced and like just the trams and like being able to get into like the infield without a problem, like it was absolutely worth it in my opinion.
not bad at all. For
There
all
you
the
go.
homies who are in
See,
Florida.
I'm not the only one saying Imsa is great value. Sebring was like $100.
Yep.
Watkins was like $100. I'm sitting in cars, holding doors, meeting drivers, getting autographs and stuff. So listen, man, I try to guide you all in the right direction. Listen to your boy. I'm gonna take you to the promised land. Don't worry. And then sooner rather than later, we'll actually be in the race.
Ooh.
But with that, that's all the time we have for today. We'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe. It's the Pitbox Podcast.